In a dark cell on a distant planet, a small alien girl named Lyra sat alone. She was chained to the cold metal wall, her green skin shining dimly in the faint light. The cell was damp and smelled of mold. Lyra looked around, but there was nothing to see except the stone walls that surrounded her. She felt scared and alone. Lyra was only 10 years old, but she was wise beyond her years. She remembered her home, a beautiful place filled with bright colors and soft sounds. The trees were tall and the flowers glowed in the dark. Her mother would sing to her as they walked through the forest, and Lyra would laugh and dance among the glowing plants. Those memories made her heart ache. Now, Lyra was trapped in this horrible place. She had been taken by raiders from her home. They came during the night while she and her mother slept. Lyra remembered the loud noises and the bright lights as the raiders stormed into her home. They grabbed her and pulled her away, ignoring her mother's cries. Lyra had fought, but she was small and weak compared to the raiders. They were big and strong, and they took her without a second thought. As she sat in her cell, Lyra wept softly. Tears rolled down her cheeks and fell onto the cold floor. She missed the warmth of her home and the safety of her forest. Lyra wrapped her arms around her knees and tried to think of something happy. But all she could see was darkness. Outside her cell, the guards laughed and talked loudly. They were rough and mean, and Lyra felt fear every time she heard their voices. She tried to ignore them, closing her eyes and wishing she could disappear. But no matter how hard she wished, she remained in the cold, dark cell. The guards often came to check on her, and when they did, they would taunt her. They would shout ugly words and laugh at her. Lyra would look up at them with wide, fearful eyes, but they only laughed more. They enjoyed seeing her scared. One guard with a scar across his face was the worst. He would come close to her cell and make faces, pretending to be her mother. His voice was deep and mocking, and Lyra hated him more than anything. "Where is your mother now, little girl?" he would sneer. "She can't save you here." Lyra would curl up tighter, wishing she could vanish. The guard would laugh and walk away, leaving her feeling more alone than ever. Days turned into weeks, and Lyra lost track of time. She had no idea how long she had been in the cell. Sometimes she could hear the sounds of other prisoners, but she could not see them. She felt as if she were the only one left in the world. She tried to stay strong, but each passing day made her feel weaker. One night, Lyra had a strange dream. She dreamed of a great warrior, a tall figure with shining armor. The warrior had bright eyes that seemed to see right through her fear. In the dream, the warrior reached out to her and said, "Do not lose hope. I will come for you." Lyra woke up feeling a little better. The dream gave her a spark of hope. Maybe someone would come to rescue her. But as days passed, hope began to fade again. Lyra often sat quietly, staring at the wall. She would sometimes sing softly to herself, trying to remember the songs her mother sang. In those moments, she felt a little less alone. She imagined her mother singing along with her, their voices blending together in the night. One day, while Lyra was sitting in her cell, she heard a loud noise. It was different from the sounds of the guards. It was a rumbling sound that echoed through the stronghold. Lyra stood up, her heart racing. She pressed her face against the cold bars of her cell, straining to see what was happening suddenly. The door to the stronghold burst open, and chaos erupted. She could hear shouting and the sounds of fighting. The guards ran past her cell, their faces filled with panic. Lyra felt a rush of excitement mixed with fear. Was this the rescue she had been waiting for? As she watched, a figure appeared in the hallway. It was a human, tall and strong, wearing strange clothes. Lyra had never seen a human before, but she had heard stories about them. They were known to be brave and fierce fighters. She held her breath, hoping this human would come to save her. The human fought with skill, taking down raiders one by one. Lyra's heart raced as she watched the battle unfold. The human moved quickly, using the environment to their advantage. Lyra could hardly believe her eyes. She felt a flicker of hope return. The fighting continued, and Lyra could see the human was winning. The guards were running away, screaming in fear. Lyra's heart lifted as she realized that soon she might be free. Finally, after what felt like In eternity, the fighting stopped. The human made their way toward her cell. Lyra's heart raced with anticipation. Would this brave warrior come to set her free? The human reached her cell and knelt down, looking at her with kind eyes. "Are you okay?" they asked, their voice gentle. Lyra nodded, tears of fear and joy mixing on her cheeks. The human quickly worked to unlock her chains, and with each click of the lock, Lyra felt her hope grow stronger. As the last chain fell away, she felt lighter, as if a great weight had been lifted from her. "Come on," the human said. "We need to get out of here." With a mixture of fear and excitement, Lyra stepped out of the cell. She felt free for the first time in weeks. Together, they ran through the stronghold, dodging debris and avoiding the remnants of the battle. Lyra looked up at her rescuer, her heart full of gratitude. She had waited so long for this moment, and now it was finally happening. Lyra would not be alone anymore. She was free, and a new adventure awaited her. As Lyra and her rescuer ran through the stronghold, the sounds of battle faded behind them. The air was thick with dust, and the smell of smoke filled their lungs. Lyra felt a mix of fear and excitement. She was free, but the danger was not over. Yet the human named Jake led the way, his strong frame moving with purpose. "Stay close to me," he said, glancing back at Lyra. His voice was firm, but she could hear a hint of warmth in it. Lyra nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. She wanted to trust him. He'd come for her when no one else would. They turned a corner and found themselves in a larger room. The walls were lined with strange machines and weapons. Jake stopped for a moment, scanning the area. Lyra peered around him, curious but cautious. She had never seen anything like this before. "These are the raiders' tools," Jake explained, pointing to a weapon that looked like a crossbow. "We have to keep moving." Without wasting time, he led. Lyra through another door, entered a narrow hallway filled with shadows. It was hard to see, but Lyra could hear faint sounds of footsteps echoing in the distance. Her heart raced with fear. What if the raiders found them? Jake noticed her anxiety. "Don't worry," he said softly. "I won't let anything happen to you." His words gave her a little comfort, but she still felt scared. They hurried down the hallway, moving quickly but quietly. Lyra tried to keep up with Jake's long strides. She looked up at him, noticing how tall and strong he was. He seemed fearless, and she wished she could be like him. As they reached the end of the hallway, Jake paused. He pressed his ear against the door, listening carefully. After a moment, he turned to Lyra. "It sounds clear. Follow my lead." Jake opened the door slowly, and they stepped outside. The bright light of the sun hit Lyra's face, and she squinted. It felt warm and comforting, a stark contrast to the cold darkness of her cell. They stood on a balcony overlooking a rocky landscape. Lyra gasped at the sight. The ground was rough and uneven, filled with sharp rocks and sparse plants. In the distance, she could see the horizon stretching wide, with strange mountains rising high into the sky. It was beautiful and terrifying all at once. "Where are we?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "We're on the outskirts of the raider base," Jake replied. "We need to find a way to escape this planet." Lyra looked around, feeling both lost and hopeful. She had never been outside her forest home before. This world was so different. Yet she felt a strange sense of adventure bubbling inside her. As they moved forward, Jake pointed to a rocky path below. "That way leads to the edge of the base. If we can get through the main gate, we can reach the ship." Lyra nodded, determination taking hold. She wanted to go home, back to her mother and her forest. They began to make their way down the path, careful to stay hidden. Suddenly, Lyra heard voices approaching. Her heart raced as she grabbed Jake's arm. "They're coming." Jake quickly pulled her behind a large rock. They crouched low, listening. As a group of raiders walked past, Lyra could see their faces, twisted with anger and frustration. They were searching for her, and she felt a chill run down her spine. "Keep quiet," Jake whispered, his eyes focused on the raiders. Lyra held her breath, praying they wouldn't notice them. The raiders continued talking, their voices harsh and loud. "We have to find that girl. She can't have gone far," one of them said. Lyra's heart sank. They were looking for her. She squeezed her eyes shut, trying to block out the fear. After a few tense moments, the raiders moved on. Jake let out a sigh of relief, and Lyra felt the tension ease a little. They waited a moment longer before Jake stood up, helping Lyra to her feet. "That was close," he said. "But we can't stay here. We have to keep moving." They continued down the rocky path, Lyra's heart pounding in her chest. Every sound made her jump. She glanced back often, expecting to see the raiders following them as they reached the main gate of the raider base. Lyra saw a large metal door, covered in rust and dirt. It looked heavy and imposing. Jake approached the gate, examining it closely. "I think I can get this open," he said, pulling out a small device from his pocket. He pressed a few buttons, and the device lit up with a soft blue glow. Lyra watched in awe as Jake worked. She had never seen anything like it. He focused intensely, his brow furrowed in concentration. After a few moments, the door let out a loud beep, and the heavy metal creaked open. Lyra's eyes widened. "You did it," she exclaimed, feeling a surge of hope. Jake smiled at her. "Let's go." They slipped through the opening, stepping into a large courtyard filled with more machines and vehicles. Lyra looked around, amazed. At the sight, there were strange ships and vehicles that looked like they could fly. "We need to find my ship," Jake said, scanning the area. "It's a small one, easy to miss." They moved carefully, staying alert for any signs of raiders. Lyra could feel the adrenaline coursing through her veins. Everything felt new and exciting, but she knew they had to be cautious as they searched. Lyra spotted a small ship tucked away in the corner of the courtyard. It was not as big as the others, but it looked sturdy. "Is that it?" she asked, pointing. Jake followed her gaze and nodded. "That's it. Let's hurry." They rushed toward the ship, but as they got closer, Lyra heard voices again. She looked back and saw a group of raiders heading straight for them. Her heart dropped. "Jake," she shouted, panic rising in her throat. Jake turned and saw the raiders as well. "Get inside the ship," he ordered, pushing her toward the entrance. Lyra scrambled. Inside, her heart racing, Jake followed her in and quickly began to close the door. The raiders were getting closer, shouting and running toward them. Lyra felt a wave of fear wash over her as she watched Jake work frantically to start the ship. Come on," he muttered, pressing buttons and pulling levers. Lyra held her breath, wishing for the ship to take off. Finally, the engines roared to life, and the ship shook as it prepared for takeoff. Lyra felt a rush of relief. They were going to escape. Just as the doors closed, the raiders reached the ship, pounding on the metal. Lyra could hear their angry shouts, but Jake focused on getting them into the air. With a sudden jolt, the ship lifted off the ground, and Lyra felt her stomach drop. They were flying. As they soared into the sky, Lyra looked out the window at the planet below. The raider base grew smaller, and she felt a wave of freedom wash over her. She was finally escaping, and her heart filled with hope for what lay ahead. The ship climbed higher into the sky, and Lyra pressed her face against the window, watching the planet shrink beneath them. The rocky landscape, once so threatening, now looked beautiful from above. She felt a sense of freedom she had never known before. Jake sat in the pilot's seat, focused and calm. "We made it," he said, a smile spreading across his face. Lyra turned to him, her heart swelling with gratitude. "Thank you for saving me," she said, her voice full of emotion. Jake glanced at her, his smile fading slightly. "I just did what anyone would do," but Lyra knew it was more than that. He had risked his life to save her. She wanted to tell him how much it meant to her, but words felt small compared to the feeling in her heart as they flew away from the planet. Jake began to check the ship's systems. Lyra watched him, fascinated by how he moved with confidence. He pressed buttons and flipped switches, making sure everything was working. "Where are we going now?" Lyra asked, curious about their next destination. Jake looked at the display in front of him. "I need to find a safe place to land. We can't go back to my home right away. The raiders might have sent a message about us." Lyra nodded, understanding the danger they were still in. She watched as Jake scanned the nearby planets. On the screen, after a few moments, he pointed to one of the planets. "This one looks good. It's mostly uninhabited, and we can rest there for a while." Lyra felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. She was still getting used to the idea of being free. The thought of landing on a new planet was both thrilling and frightening. As they approached the planet, Lyra noticed its surface was covered in blue and green colors. It looked like a giant jewel in the sky. Jake brought the ship down smoothly, landing in a small clearing surrounded by tall trees. When the ship settled on the ground, Lyra let out a sigh of relief. They were safe, at least for now. Jake stood up and stretched. "Let's go explore. We need to make sure the area is clear." Lyra followed him out of the ship, stepping onto the soft grass. The air was fresh and smelled sweet, unlike the dank air of the Raider base. She took a deep breath, feeling a sense of calm wash over her. They walked together into the trees, the sunlight filtering through the leaves. Lyra felt a thrill of adventure as she moved deeper into the forest. The sounds of birds chirping and leaves rustling filled the air. Jake pointed to a small stream nearby. "We can get some water from there if we need it." Lyra knelt beside the stream, watching the water flow over the smooth stones. It was so clear and cool. She felt a smile spread across her face. This place was beautiful. After exploring for some time, they found a small clearing with bright flowers and tall grass. Lyra danced among the flowers, feeling free and happy. She had been trapped for so long, and now she could finally enjoy life again. Jake watched her, a smile on his face. "You look happy," he said, sitting down on a log. "I am," Lyra replied, spinning around. "This place is amazing. Thank you for bringing me here." Jake nodded, but his expression turned serious. "We can't stay too long. We need to keep moving." Once we're ready, Lyra understood. The fear of the raiders still lingered in her mind, but for the first time in weeks, she felt a glimmer of hope. They had escaped and she was safe with Jake. As they rested, Lyra gathered some flowers and picked a few to keep. She wanted something to remind her of this moment, this feeling of freedom. After a while, Jake stood up and stretched again. "Let's check the ship and see if we need to refuel. We should also make sure everything is okay." Lyra followed him. Back to the ship, her heart still light. When they reached it, Jake began checking the fuel levels and the ship's systems. Lyra watched him work, impressed by how much he knew. After a few minutes, Jake turned to her. "Everything looks good. We should be able to leave soon." Lyra felt a twinge of sadness. She loved this place, but she also wanted to go home. She missed her mother and her forest. "Will we go back to my planet?" she asked. Jake hesitated. "I think it's best to wait until it's safe. We need to make sure the raiders are not still looking for you. Once it is safe, we will find a way back." Lyra nodded, understanding the need for caution. They needed to be smart about their next steps. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink, Lyra and Jake sat outside the ship, watching the stars appear one by one. The beauty of the night sky filled Lyra with wonder. "You ever see things like this on your planet?" she asked, glancing at Jake. "Sometimes," he replied, "but it's different. The stars always seem brighter when you're away from home." Lyra thought about her home and how it had been taken from her. But now, sitting beside Jake under the stars, she felt a new sense of belonging. "What do you think will happen next?" Lyra asked, her voice quiet. Jake looked thoughtful. "I will. Keep moving and stay safe. I'll make sure you get home. You're not alone anymore." Lyra smiled at his words. They were a promise, and she felt her heart swell with gratitude as the night grew darker. They shared stories about their lives. Lyra talked about her home, her mother, and the forest she loved. Jake shared tales of his adventures, of other worlds he had explored, and the challenges he had faced. With each story, Lyra felt a bond growing between them. They were both survivors in their own ways, and together they could face whatever came next. Eventually, they grew tired and decided to rest for the night. Lyra crawled into the ship, feeling safe and secure. She curled up in a corner, holding the flowers she had picked close to her heart. As she drifted off to sleep, Lyra dreamed of her home. She saw her mother smiling and the glowing trees surrounding her. For the first time in a long while, she felt a sense of peace. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for now, she was safe with Jake, and that was enough. She closed her eyes, letting the warmth of hope fill her dreams. When morning light broke through the trees, Lyra woke up feeling refreshed. She stretched and looked around the small ship. Jake was already awake, sitting at the controls and checking the ship's systems. "Good morning," Lyra said, her voice still. Sleepy Jake turned and smiled. "Good morning. How did you sleep?" "I slept well," she replied. Feeling grateful for the safety of the ship, after a quick breakfast of some food Jake had packed, they prepared to leave their temporary home. Lyra looked out the window at the beautiful planet they had landed on. It was hard to leave such a lovely place, but she knew they needed to move on. Jake finished his checks and stood up. "Are you ready to go?" he asked. Lyra nodded, her heart racing with excitement and anxiety. "Yes, let's go." They climbed into the pilot's seat together. Jake started the engines and the ship rumbled to life. Lyra watched as they lifted off the ground, the trees below fading away. Soon they were soaring into the sky. As they flew, Jake plotted a course to a nearby planet. "We need to gather more supplies," he said. "We might also find some information about the raiders." Lyra felt a mix of nervousness and excitement. She wanted to stay safe, but she also wanted to help find out more about the people who had taken her from her home. After a short flight, they reached the new planet. It was a bustling place, filled with different species and colorful markets. Lyra felt her eyes widen as they landed. "This is a safe planet," Jake explained. "We can find what we need and blend in with the crowd." They stepped out of the ship and into the busy marketplace. Lyra was amazed by the sights and sounds around her. There were creatures of all shapes and sizes, selling goods and chatting with each other. "Stay close to me," Jake said, keeping a protective hand on her shoulder. Lyra nodded, feeling a mix of wonder and fear. The marketplace was vibrant, but it was also overwhelming. She followed Jake as he navigated through the crowd, looking for supplies. They stopped at a stall filled with fruits and vegetables. "Let's get some food," Jake said, picking up a few items. Lyra watched as he traded some credits for the food, amazed at how quickly he moved. After gathering some water and snacks, Jake said, "Now we need to find information about the raiders." Lyra felt her heart race again. She wanted to know more, but the thought of the raiders made her nervous. How will we do that? Jake looked around and pointed to a nearby cantina. "Let's go in there. People often talk about news and rumors." They entered the cantina. Lyra noticed the atmosphere was different. The room was filled with laughter and music, a stark contrast to the serious mood outside. She felt a little more relaxed. Jake led her to a table in the corner. They ordered drinks and listened to the conversations around them. Lyra was still nervous, but felt safe with Jake by her side. After a while, Jake leaned in closer. "Listen to that group over there," he whispered, nodding toward a table of aliens discussing something in hushed tones. Lyra strained to hear them. "What are they saying?" "They're talking about the raiders," Jake replied, his expression serious. Lyra's heart raced again. She focused on the conversation, trying to catch every word. The aliens spoke of recent attacks and how the raiders had become more aggressive. They mentioned a new leader who was ruthless and wanted to expand their territory. Lyra felt a shiver run down her spine. "What if they are looking for me?" she asked, her voice trembling. Jake placed a reassuring hand on her arm. "We will be careful. We won't let them find us." After they finished their drinks, Jake decided to gather more information. "Stay here," he said. "I'll be right back." Lyra watched as he approached the group, his posture confident. She felt a mix of fear and worry as she waited at the table, hoping Jake would be okay. Jake spoke to the aliens, and Lyra could see them gesture animatedly. He leaned in, his expression serious. After a few moments, he returned to her table. "Did you find out?" Lyra asked, eager to know. "The raiders are planning another raid soon." "They are looking for more captives to sell," Jake said, his voice low. Lyra's heart sank. "What if they come here?" "We need to be cautious. We can't stay too long," Jake replied. "But I also found out that their new leader is based on a nearby planet. If we can get information about them, we might be able to stop them." Lyra felt a surge of determination. "I want to help. We can't let them hurt anyone else." Jake looked at her, surprised. "Are you sure? It could be dangerous?" "Sure," Lyra said, her voice steady. "They took me from my home, and I don't want anyone else to suffer like I did." Jake nodded, impressed by her bravery. Okay, then we will gather more supplies and head to the other planet. They left the cantina and returned to the marketplace, gathering more food and water. Lyra felt more confident now, knowing they had a plan. Once they finished shopping, they returned to the ship. Jake began inputting coordinates for the next planet. Lyra looked out the window, watching the bustling marketplace fade into the distance. As they flew into space, Lyra felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. They were heading into danger, but she was ready to face it. After a short flight, they arrived. At the new planet, it was smaller and less populated than the last one. Jake landed the ship in a hidden area, away from prying eyes. We need to be careful here, he said, turning to Lyra. We don't know how strong the Raiders' presence is. Lyra nodded, her heart racing. She could feel the weight of their mission pressing down on her. Jake led the way as they stepped out of the ship. The air was cooler here, and the landscape was rocky and barren. They moved cautiously, looking for any signs of the Raiders. They walked for a while, searching for any clues. Lyra felt a sense of purpose as they moved deeper into the planet. She wanted to help others, just like Jake had helped her. Eventually, they found a small settlement. It looked run down, and the few aliens they saw seemed wary. Jake approached one of them, a tall creature with green skin. Do you know anything about the Raiders? Jake asked. The creature looked at them suspiciously. What do you want with them? I want to stop them, Lyra said, stepping forward. Took me from my home, and I don't want them to hurt anyone else. The creature's expression softened a little.
Ow.
The Raiders are powerful and dangerous. They have taken many from here. Lyra felt a surge of determination. Need to find out where their base is. The creature nodded, glancing around as if checking. For eavesdroppers, follow me. I know someone who can help. They followed the creature through the settlement, their hearts pounding with anticipation. Lyra felt a mix of fear and excitement. They were getting closer to the Raiders, and she was ready to face whatever came next. As they approached a small building, Lyra's mind raced with thoughts of what they might find inside. She was ready to fight for her freedom and for others who had been taken. Together with Jake, she could make a difference. Lyra followed the tall creature into the small building. It was dim inside, and the air felt thick with dust. The walls were made of rough stone, and there were strange symbols carved into them. Lyra looked around, feeling both curious and nervous. The creature led them to a room at the back. Inside, an older alien sat at a table covered with maps and papers. He looked up as they entered, his eyes sharp and wise. This is Garrick, the tall creature said. He knows about the Raiders. Garrick studied Lyra and Jake for a moment before speaking. You are here to learn about the Raiders, I see. Lyra nodded, her heart pounding. We want to stop them. They took me from my home, and I don't want anyone else to suffer. Garrick's expression softened. You are brave to want to fight them. The Raiders are not easy to defeat. Jake stepped forward. What do we need to know? Where is their base? Garrick spread out a map on the table. He pointed to a location marked with a red circle. This is where they are based. It is heavily guarded, and they have many weapons. Lyra felt a chill run down her spine. It looked dangerous. How can we get in? She asked, her voice steady. Garrick leaned back, thinking, you will need a plan. They have patrols and watchtowers. You cannot just walk in. Jake looked at Lyra, and she could see the determination in his eyes. We can find a way. We need to know their routines. Garrick nodded. You will need to observe them from a distance. I can give you supplies to help. Lyra felt a rush of hope. If they could gather information, they might have a chance. Thank you, she said, grateful for Garrick's help. Garrick handed them a small bag filled with food and water, along with some tools. Be careful. If you get caught, it could be dangerous for you. We will be careful, Jake promised, taking the bag. After gathering what they needed, Lyra and Jake left the small building. They moved quietly through the settlement, feeling the weight of their mission. As they reached the edge of the settlement, they could see the Raider base in the distance. It was surrounded by tall walls and had watchtowers at each corner. Lyra's heart raced as she looked at it. How do we get close? She asked, feeling nervous. Jake pointed to a nearby hill. If we climb that, we can see their movements and figure out a plan. Lyra nodded, her determination growing. They climbed the hill, carefully using the rocks for support. When they reached the top, they crouched down. Hiding behind some bushes, from their vantage point they could see the raider base clearly. Lyra watched as raiders moved around, some training with weapons, others patrolling the area. It looked busy and chaotic. "We need to watch for a while," Jake said, his eyes focused on the base. Lyra felt a mix of fear and excitement. They were close to the enemy, but she also felt powerful. She was ready to fight for her freedom and for others. They stayed hidden for a long time, observing the raiders. Lyra noted their routines, watching how they moved and where they went. After some time, she turned to Jake. "In their patrols?" Jake nodded, looking where she pointed. "We can use that to our advantage." As the sun began to set, the raiders started to gather for dinner. Lyra watched as they relaxed, their guards down. This was their chance to move. "Let's go," Jake whispered, and they began to move down the hill carefully. They crept toward the base, sticking to the shadows. Lyra's heart pounded in her chest as they approached the wall. She could see the entrance, guarded by 2 raiders. "We need to distract them," Jake said, looking around for anything they could use. Lyra spotted some rocks nearby. "I can throw a rock to create a noise," she suggested. Jake nodded. "That could work. Just make sure you aim well." Lyra picked up a rock and threw it toward a nearby tree. The sound echoed in the quiet evening, and she watched as the 2 raiders turned to "Look in that direction now," Jake said, and they dashed toward the entrance while the raiders were distracted. They slipped inside the base, their hearts racing with adrenaline. The inside was dark, and Lyra could hear the sounds of the raiders talking and laughing in the distance. "Need to find their leader," Jake said, scanning the area. They moved quietly through the corridors, staying alert for any signs of danger. Lyra felt a mix of fear and determination. She was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As they searched, they discovered a room filled with weapons. Lyra's eyes widened at the sight of the guns and knives. "They have so many," she whispered. Jake nodded. "We need to be careful. If we can take out their weapons, it will weaken them." They quickly gathered some supplies, taking a few weapons, and stashing them in their bags. Lyra felt a sense of power as she held a weapon in her hand. After gathering what they could, they continued their search for the leader. They moved through the base, careful to avoid any raiders. Lyra's heart raced with each step, but she felt stronger with Jake beside her. Finally, they reached a large door at the end of the hallway. This must be where the leader was. Lyra felt a mix of fear and excitement. "Are you ready?" Jake asked. Looking at her, Lyra took a deep breath and nodded. "Yes, let's do this." Jake pushed the door open and they stepped inside. The room was dimly lit, and they could see the leader sitting at a table, surrounded by guards. The leader looked up, surprised to see them. "What do we have here?" he sneered, a cruel smile on his face. Lyra's heart raced as she stepped forward, holding her weapon tightly. "We're here to stop you." The leader laughed, but Lyra could see the anger in his eyes. "You think you can stop me? You are just a child." Jake stepped in front of her, his stance strong. "You're wrong. We're not afraid of you." The leader's expression changed, his smile fading. "You'll regret this." Before Lyra could react, the guards moved toward them. Jake quickly raised his weapon, and Lyra followed suit. A fierce battle erupted in the room. Lyra felt adrenaline surge through her as she fought alongside Jake. They moved quickly, using the element of surprise to their advantage. Lyra dodged and weaved, her heart pounding as she fired her weapon. She was no longer the scared girl from the cell. She was a fighter. After a fierce struggle, they managed to take down the guards. Lyra felt a rush of triumph as the last guard fell. The leader looked furious, his eyes blazing with anger. "We'll pay for this." Jake stepped forward, ready to confront him. "Not if we stop you first." With a final push, Lyra and Jake worked together, taking down the leader. As he fell, Lyra felt a wave of relief wash over her. They had done it. The raiders had been defeated, and she was free as they stood in the room. Catching their breath, Lyra looked at Jake. "We did it." Jake smiled at her, pride shining in his eyes. You were amazing. Lyra felt a warmth in her chest. They had faced danger together, and now they were victorious. With the leader defeated, they quickly gathered more supplies and made their way out of the base. Lyra felt a sense of freedom as they stepped outside. The sun was rising, painting the sky with colors of hope. They returned to their ship, ready to leave the raider base behind. As they lifted off the ground, Lyra looked back at the planet below. "I'm finally free," she whispered, feeling tears of joy fill her eyes. Jake smiled at her, and together they soared into the sky, ready for their next adventure.